Hey there, welcome to the channel. I'm Cindy Daychek with Queen Bee Creations, and today we're going to work on this. I thrifted this for $6, I guess, and it is a cool, really old, vintage, wooden bucket, I guess. It almost looks like the base to like a butter churner or something. It's got all these metal details, so all these little florals are metal, these are metal, the bands are metal. I don't think that they're all the same metal, and I don't think that they're great metal, but they are all nailed in. So what I'm going to try and do is remove them and the bands. I do not think that the bands are holding all of the slats of the little barrel together. I am hoping that that's true, but I am going to attempt to remove them and see how that goes. So it's just a case of carefully trying to pry those nails out, if I can, without ripping or tearing any of the metal banding or the edges. I mean, these little flowers, these little tiny flowers here, they've got little baby nails in them. So I'm hoping that I can lift them without wrecking them or tearing the florals, because it's possible that they were glued down. But I'm going to have to carefully remove everything, hang on to all of the little nails, so that I can reapply them afterward. But if I can get all of the metal parts removed okay, then I can refinish the wood better. Trying to paint over or like around everything would be virtually impossible, in which case then you would be forced to distress back to them, and that's always an option. But I thought it would be so cool if we highlighted all those metal details, which means being able to get them off. And right now I'm kind of looking at, they are pretty delicate, so I'm not sure how it's going to go. All right, so I'm going to try and remove everything, see how it goes. If I can't, then we'll be back to talk about distressing and kind of going from there. Always options, right? Start with what your first preference is and then go from there. Okay, I've got all the metal off of this that I can. Now the bottom is held together by nails into the base, but the top is held together by these metal bands that are not worth attempting to take off, because all the slats are going to become loose and they are kind of inset. They're pretty permanent. So we're going to leave them and not mess with it. What I am going to do is take this over to my sander, and I am going to get the wood all sanded down. Now there's uneven spots and stuff, but it is what it is. Now this stuff is nothing special and it's pretty rusty, so I am going to wash it just to get that off. But I'm not going to be able to finish these with just cleaning. You know, they're just going to end up being steel. These are more like brass. The dilemma though is that if I clean these up as brass and then these are something else, it's going to look awkward because you're going to have two different colored metals. Additionally, these bands up here, I can't remove properly and finish them the same as these bands, and I don't want three different looks. So what I am going to do is look at hand painting. I have a spray paint that would work perfect on this, but then I can't spray paint this. Just, you know, the thought process behind this. So instead, I'm going to wait and see how this wood turns out, how it looks, and see then what color I ultimately want to paint the metal, because I want it to be contrasting. It's not going to go silver, but whether it goes, you know, like a coppery, and then I tone it down with a dark wax, and I don't know yet. So sanding first and refinishing the wood, then and cleaning this. I'm not sure how it's going to work with these strappings, because they were a pain. They were a pain to take off. So, you know, I thought it would be quick. Okay. As it turns out, the sanding kind of loosened this in the inside band. It's just held on one side. And I wanted to leave that on because otherwise the slats are all loose and only attached at the bottom. The inner ring came off, but you can see the difference of what it looks like, especially with these outside bands. So here's now what I'm gonna try and do. Because it cleans up, and you can see that I didn't sand it to total pristine perfection because it's old. This is old. It doesn't need to look perfect. But what I am going to try and do is get something round and try sanding this against whatever that is so that I can get this looking at least the mottled silver look of this. And then this, I have to do the inside. So these two rings, outside sanded, this inside sanded. And then I did take a hammer and try and flatten these down. So I'll try and sand the outside of these as well. If they all kind of come up with this mottled silvery look, then I'm leaving them that, because that's original. That's them. In which case then I may take some bartender's barkeeper's friend, and try and clean off the tops of these to take them back to the original metal. And they're not all perfect. Like some are, can you see this one's all broken? I'm missing one of the teeny tiny ones. It was attached, but when I was taking it off, it flew somewhere. It's in here somewhere. I made a cursory look, couldn't find it lying out in the open, which means I'm right by all of the boxes, the empty. It could be anywhere, so I'm not going to sweat it. But I will try cleaning those with Barkeeper's Friend and see how far I get with that. If I can get them kind of cleaned up, again, I'm not looking for pristine. I don't mind it continuing to look old, then I will leave those too. So what I am doing then is I'm going to start sanding my strips and my rings, because then that's going to determine the way I go with those little florals. So I just have a bunch of really messy, noisy work ahead. Okay, the Barkeeper's Friend is not noisy, it's just messy, and it's a, you know, just do it in front of the movie or something, right? But what I will do is I will take like the Barkeeper's Friend and a stencil brush and swirl it all over it like that. And that works as a bit of a scrubber. So I find that works the easiest for me. And then remove it with a cloth. Okay. I really just thought this was kind of an interesting look. I didn't realize I would get so involved in it. Sometimes these things take a life of their own, and this one has just done that. I'm not going to be able to sell it for a lot, so I'm not looking at spending an inordinate amount of time or taking it back to its original condition. I am not agonizing over the inside of it, but I think I'm just getting emotionally attached to the project rather than practically attached to it. And that just happens sometimes. Maybe I end up keeping it. I don't know. Now, that I have this kind of sanded off, and it's not perfect, but I'm okay with that. I want to get it lightly stained. And so what I do have is very weak coffee, just coffee. And I didn't want it to go super dark, but the coffee will bring out some of that natural richness of the wood. So I'm going to get this applied, let it dry, and then we need to seal it. The coffee obviously doesn't act as a sealer, so I will want to seal it before I start adding any of my metallics back. But won't that be cool? I'm thinking that to seal it, I am just going to take like hemp oil. I'm not going to use, after sanding everything off, I'm just going to use like a natural product. We'll see how that goes. Maybe a wax. I could do a wax as well. For our bucket, I love the tone of this with that coffee stain on it. This will darken as we seal it. And for that, I'm going to be using wax. I really want to, you know, this is an old piece and it's very dry. And so the wax is going to serve to nourish that wood. Look at the color. It will dry a little bit lighter as that wax kind of dries, but it's still going to stay kind of that rich, dark look, which is going to be a lovely contrast with those stainless steel bands, and then with our kind of our tarnished gold. Now that we went through all that with the barkeeper's friend and everything, we'll be able to have a lot of that showing, that metallic showing. So I will do the bottom of this as well. Get that all kind of soaking into that wood. And then it's really a case now, and I'm not wiping any of this wax away. I'm just leaving it so that it gets absorbed back into that wood. Look at how lovely that looks. Okay. I'm leaving that to get absorbed back into that wood, and it'll help condition it. Lets it, you know, dry. Old wood gets thirsty. It's like thirsty wood. So what I am going to start to do is to reattach the bands. So this is one that's ultimately going to go on the inside, and you know, if I can get them back where they go. But this one's going to go back on the inside. I'm going to use a little bit of wood glue on it as I get that in, and then, you know, we have to reattach these bands down on the lower body. These strap-in ones, so you can see how awkward they are, but just putting them back in place, and then I can hammer all of these little discs back in place as well. So it's just kind of reattaching things to be able to see what our finished look turns out. This was a lot more work than I anticipated originally, so sometimes I get myself into a jackpot, but we'll see. My fingers are crossed that it turns out it's going to look better. I mean, there's no way that it's not going to look better than it was. There's no way that it is so different or so unique or so special that it was worth the time and effort, however. So it will get listed and it will get sold for significantly less than the time and effort it took me to take it there. But sometimes that's okay. Sometimes it's what the piece needs and not just my idea of what to do with it originally. I had bought it thinking I would just paint it and distress back to the details. And it just asked for me to not do that. Now, one of the things, I'm just gonna look at even even though it's all modeled, because it just would have taken forever to get it, I quite like that look. Getting these to fit back in, bear in mind that there is going to be, that each of the rings is on a bit of a curve, right? So you've got a definite top and bottom. If it doesn't seem to be going on well, flip it around, because it's got an edging that goes like this, which kind of fits that outside curvature of this. So what is left to do is to take these bands and put them over and just start nailing them in place and securing them where they should go, and then I can add my other little decor pieces in there, which I may not do quite as many as were on there before. I'm not sure. So we'll see how that goes. But these just kind of fit on the side and curve down the edge, and then get nailed in place. I'm not sure that I have a lot of their nails. I might have to look for something different, but ultimately we're just bending this and then affixing them. So it won't be too hard. Just as I'm adding this strapping on, and turns out the nails I was going to use are too long. The nails that came out of here are too bent. So I'm actually using thumbtacks, which I don't think look bad, considering now we have got this kind of a galvanized, aged, silvery tone. But to put these into perspective, and just to give you an idea of how this is going, I am kind of lining it up in 4s and making sure that when I bend that I have enough on the top and the bottom. And then I am having to punch a hole in there with this kind of straight ball, because the thumbtacks need a head start. Otherwise, they just flatten and break off. The bottom isn't a major issue because it's a softer wood than the sides, but I do want to show you. Just get this one going. There we go. But as I go up further up here, I am taking a board that fits in and using it to hammer against, just so that it lends a little bit more strength to my form, and I'm not risking snapping some of those boards. And I wasn't sure if I didn't show you that you'd know what I meant with that. But it just helps stabilize everything and makes it a little firmer, so that when I'm hammering these last tacks in, that these fragile boards have something to brace against. This is our finished little bucket. Now, I did not add as many of these on. I thought it looked busy enough. I thought it was enough. So that was my discretion. But definitely looks way more interesting than it did when everything was just a muted brown. Now, my original thought when I thrifted this was paint it and distress back to highlight some of the banding and the details. I had thought that I would maybe paint them copper and then distress back to the copper. but I like this look better. I like this. It's rustic, it's unusual, it's unique, and it was a pain. There's no other way to put that. There was a lot more work that went into this than I am ever going to get out of it. So this is one of those projects where it just spoke to me as to what it wanted and what it needed. No way am I ever going to be able to get my money's worth out of this. And sometimes that just is okay, because this made my heart happy. Doesn't necessarily positively impact my pocketbook from a shop perspective, but I feel justified because I did a video of it. So I feel like it wasn't a total loss or waste. But if you recall the first look, and I'll post a picture of it beginning and then this, you can see what sometimes little treasures or unknown elements are hiding behind years of dirt more than anything else. Let me know what you think of this one, guys. Let me know if you've had projects that took an unexpected and more time-consuming turn than you originally anticipated for it, and how you ended up feeling at the end. I love this. No one else is going to appreciate the work that went into it, but I'm okay with that because I think it looks like it was supposed to look. And sometimes that's enough. Looking forward to your comments and looking forward to seeing you on the next one. Until then, take care.